that hell that they have to go through to get to the United States isn't from a Disney movie. This is reality. These are stories of people that have to stay in Mexico to satisfy debt to cartel while their family comes across, and whether that's through prostitution or drug running or whatever they have to do to satisfy the bill they owe to the cartel is not a humane process. And people who stand on that do not understand what they're talking about. There's just no way any human being would think that would be the right system to support.
Right.
The right system to support is the rule of law, because that's where you protect the individual as well as the countries. And when you have a process where there's vetting, where there's an actual, here's how it works, and people follow that, that's the way you protect humanity. That's the way you make sure everyone gets a fair shake.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. We're coming to you from Yuma, Arizona, where Americans of Prosperity is bringing folks down here to the border to kind of see what life's really like here. And who better to share that with us than Mayor Douglas Nicholls, Mayor of Yuma. Now, Mayor Nicholls was on the show with our former host, Jeff Crank, a few years back when he came down and joined this tour. And so now we're so happy to have you back, and we want to kind of hear an update, hear what's going on, and what it's like to be the Mayor of Yuma.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me back. This is always a good conversation, and you picked my favorite topic, being the Mayor of Yuma. So it covers quite a bit of ground. Right now things are great, actually. We have had, specifically focused on the border, we've had a drop-off. I haven't even figured out what the percentage is, because it went from about 500 to 600 a week, or a day, to 5 a day.
Crossings per day?
Crossings per day. Illegal arrested? Crossings.
Wow.
Yes. So that changes the complexity of the community a little bit, but really more for our agents. So we have like 800 Border Patrol agents in our community, and they're really truly part of our community. They're our neighbors. We go to church with them, shop with them, play baseball, all that stuff. They're not like this foreign element in our community. So we get to see them again on all the other non-business stuff. And they get to be proactive. They get to be very proactive on chasing out drugs, being proactive on all the intel work that kind of got glossed over just because of the sheer volume that we were dealing with for the previous 4 years. And so that's been very enlightening. It's been maybe a little bit nostalgic. I mean, even before President Trump was in the first time, we weren't at 5 people a day. So sure. It's really changed the parameters along the border.
Well, so you've been mayor since 2014, right?
Yes.
I believe, and then city council member before that?
Just for a brief 5-month period. Okay. It's kind of a weird story how I got to be mayor, so we don't necessarily have to go into that, but it was kind of a quick hop, skip, jump, and then right into the mayor gig.
So you've really seen, by being a border town, you've really seen the ebb and flow of what so many people in the nation have been watching from afar. And I imagine the impact on your community has been really profound. So maybe kind of share some of that, what it was like, and then what it seems like now.
Sure. I mean, so one of the things that I was impressed with when I got in the office of mayor, so this is before any of this craziness really happened, was how all the law enforcement agencies in the area worked, from PD to the sheriff's department to our federal partners. They all worked very well together. I was on a ride-along trying to understand the police force better once I got in office, and there was some gunshots rang out. Well, we showed up, and it ended up being nothing of an event. It was someone fired into the air, but every agency was there. Our Border Patrol agents were there, the federal marshals were there, the sheriff's department, and that was just indicative, very, very common for us to be able to support each other. These weren't like, okay, well, I got to get permission from this guy to respond to a city event or any of that. They just, it's our community. And so every element of the community responds. So that's kind of the tradition where we came from. So it got very frustrating when you get into one agency being overwhelmed way beyond the capacity of the whole community. Mm-hmm. In the first Trump administration, we had a little dust up along the border, and everybody came together. It wasn't anywhere near what we experienced in the last 4 years. And everyone came together and did what they could. It was over in 3 to 4 months, and we were kind of back to normal. And then when things started to explode, it really became difficult to respond because our police force still has to police our community, right? And the border, while we're on the border, we're not up against the border like the city of San Luis is. There's a couple miles between us and the border, and it's ag field. So it's a direct access, but it's not easy access for us to help respond. So that became frustrating from a historical point of view, that we really worked together as a community, but it was just so much. I mean, the sheriff's department did commit some officers for transport, but those were his transport officers anyway. I mean, so there was just these kind of things were really the change as we kind of rolled into those record numbers coming across the border. Our fire department, which often gets overlooked in this discussion, but particularly when the wall got put up, people get up to the top of a 30-foot high wall and freeze. They don't feel they can come down, or they fall. Well, all those require emergency response. Well, we had urban firefighting equipment. We didn't have rural firefighting equipment or scalable equipment, right? So we would have to mobile out our ladder truck, which is the only ladder truck we have, across dusty and dirty roads, sometimes off-road, and take it away from really responding to our community. Those kind of things became very, very frustrating, that these are federal issues, and the federal government was detached from helping us deal with an issue that was beyond our control, beyond anything we could impact. So there's, I honestly don't remember what your original question was, but that's kind of where it went.
You tell me, we saw, we saw those kind of record numbers during the past administration.
Yes.
And then now, we were talking to our friend, Chief Chris Clem.
Yes.
That, he says the border is as secure as he's ever seen it. And is that kind of how you feel from your time living here?
Oh, 100%. I've lived here since I was 4. I'm a lot older than 4 now. And it had never been as contentious as it has been the last decade. But the security of it has never been this high. The walls going up, it kind of makes sense, and you kind of scratch your head. Why did we wait so long to get something here? We had a few things. We had the landing mat fence. Obama did some fence building, and Bush. Matter of fact, I think it was under Bush that the cartels would throw rocks and shoot at the National Guard as they were building the fence. And again, that was as contentious as it had ever gotten up until recently. Now, what's really, I don't know about odd, but it's kind of unique. You don't really understand it till you start living here and working here. But the communities across the border are our friends. They're our family, people we do business with. There's people who live in Yuma who go into Mexico to work every day, and people who live in Mexico to come into Yuma every day. And it's truly more of an international community. The problem wasn't the adjacent communities. The problem was the people coming through and the cartels that were running them through those communities. I had some meetings with some of the mayors, been through a few mayors down in San Luis Rio, Colorado for the last dozen years. And you could see the frustration on their face because they too were not prepared to be able to stem that flow. And so they had to try to manage it through their nonprofits, and they didn't. And the same issue with our nonprofits, they weren't funded for that kind of thing. So to maintain a relationship with the cities across the border and the people and the agencies across the border, while still fighting this situation, that was a big challenge.
Well, we were out at the border at the wall earlier today, and totally right. There's these massive green leafy fields that help feed America, and there's tons of workers out there working in them. Can you tell the story about, that's a great story of legal immigration playing a role in your economy? Right.
So, and that's, again, one of the things people don't understand. We have, let's just give you the Chamber of Commerce statement. We produce 95% of the leafy greens that the United States and Canada consumes during the winter. In other words, if you're having a salad this time of year, it came from Yuma, right? It takes about 50,000 people for that harvest.
Wow.
Our community, our city of Yuma is 110,000. Our county is just over 200,000. We don't have it all locally, right? Some of it is Americans that go back and forth between here and Salinas for the seasons. But quite a bit of it is foreign labor that comes through legally. H-2A, green card, those kind of programs. So every day we have about 10,000 people who cross through the San Luis port of entry to come to work. They have legal paperwork, and without those workers, the harvest could not get done. There's some of them stay in the United States, and again, they're foreign labor that are here. Now, what's great about our American foreign labor programs is they are required to open up those jobs to Americans first. And whatever's unfilled, then they go through a very strict vetting process. You don't get to just show up one day. You have to apply. They do background checks, and then when you get your permit, to work, it is for one employer, for one time period, for a very specific job. So you can't decide, I'm going to go work for this guy today or that guy tomorrow. You have a sponsor, and it keeps the accountability very clear. And so you go back home. In that program, you at the end, you go back home. If you don't have another contract or another 2A, well, it's H2A designation to go to. So that's how we keep legal labor in check. So everyone's asked me, so what are you going to do? What's your economy going to do when all the workers go away? Well, the workers aren't going away because they're legal workers. Our economy does not depend upon the illegal worker coming through and looking for a job. So it's not what people expect.
Yeah, it seems to me that that's one of the places. It's a great example of legal immigration working the way it's supposed to. Unfortunately, the immigration system hasn't worked right for the vast majority of people coming through, and I think some of that was intentional in the past administration, and we opened up floodgates, and of course it wasn't going to work. And I'm pretty hopeful, actually, that the current administration will help it work right again.
Yes.
But that is a great example of it really working well in a symbiotic relationship for the folks coming across the border to work, and the landowners and the companies that are getting that, and then the food that we're eating.
Right, yeah. We kind of need that. And if you look at food security, yes, we need to make sure everybody can eat. But it's not just about that. It's also national security. If our food source is in a foreign country, we are compromised. That's a weak point. So to be able to grow our own food is a national security issue. And our farmers here do a great job. They do not want to hire illegal labor because that labor is not dependable. They spend a lot of time training. They have high production rates required. And so to do that, they have to have some very strong skills. So they want people who are going to show up day after day because they've already invested in them to make sure that they can do the job. And that shows up in a lot of our companies, and they have generational workers. The fathers,
really?
Yes, and then their kids come, and they'll work for the same farmer for 20, 30 years through like an H-2A program or those kind of local domestic foreign worker programs. So it's not the Cesar Chavez day of creating a negative work environment and abusing your workers. It's very much an industry that is ran professionally, that respects its workers because they realize how important part of the process they are.
Now, there's the dark side, obviously, that has come along with the border being open, and you mentioned the cartels.
Yes.
And so you're in a pretty unique area where you run a pretty good sized city that is right next to cartel area because cartel activity. I mean, characterize for folks, particularly who aren't directly impacted or at least don't feel it by cartel activity, like how that's manifest in here and what you've seen over your years.
So that's another very big misconception between the Border Patrol and the Customs and all the federal partners and our local partners. Part of that great working relationship is intel. And so we are not inundated with heavy cartel presence. Now, you go south of the border, immediately you're in that. And so San Luis Rio, Colorado, Mexicali, been going to those cities nearly my whole life. They have changed. You can tell the the overbearing presence of those cartels and what's happening right now with changes of leaderships. There's internal fighting, and that's causing most of the violence. We don't really see that north of the border.
Thank God.
Thank God, yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be living here. I mean, I grew up here, and it was truly a small town. You know, you leave your car running when you go inside, picks up some things you forgot, that kind of thing. We can still do a lot of that here, even though we're now over 100,000 people year round. And that's the challenge of being mayor, is to not lose the identity of the city as you grow.
Yeah.
So been happy that we've kept that. But the cartel elements are real. So there's parts of the border in the Yuma sector that it takes you over a day to walk to civilization, and it's through the Barium Goldwater Range. So this is a live fire military range. And in years past, the military didn't have protocols to check for people on the ground. And you see a migrant walking through the deserts looking for shade, because there isn't a lot of shade in the desert, and sees a structure. You go hide in the structure. Well, that structure's a target.
Oh.
So in years past, they've unfortunately lost people there. But where we're losing people now is in that walk. Yeah. You can't possibly carry enough water through the heat of the summer. And in 2023, we lost over 70 people in the desert. They're people. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people. No one should be dying over this. And that's a genuine tragedy. Yeah. But that number is about 4 times higher than we've ever had in the past. So the loss of life is real, and so people want to be compassionate. I get that, but look the system that they had to go through for your compassion. Yeah. It wasn't compassionate. Routinely, we would find, and I believe when we were here a couple years ago, we'd find packets of pills for Plan B because the girls were being raped. You would find IDs, because if they took your ID, you didn't know who you were. They couldn't prove who you were, and so they could extort you or exploit you. That hell that they have to go through to get to the United States isn't from a Disney movie. This is reality. These are stories of people that have to stay in Mexico to satisfy debt to cartel while their family comes across, and whether that's through prostitution or drug running or whatever they have to do to satisfy the bill they owe to the cartel, is not a humane process. No. And people who stand on that do not understand what they're talking about. Right. There's just no way any human being would think that would be the right system to support.
Right.
The right system to support is the rule of law, because that's where you protect the individual as well as the countries. And when you have a process where there's vetting, where there's an actual, here's how it works, and people follow that, that's the way you protect humanity. That's the way you make sure everyone gets a fair shake. My father-in-law emigrated at age 18 from Mexicali. Really? He is blown away by, not to speak for him, but he's blown away by the people who have been circumventing the process, but at what cost to themselves. So it's not just, well, I was born in the United States, so I have this privilege, and I'm taking advantage of that privilege, and I don't seem to understand. This is not that. This is understanding what the human condition is walking across the border.
Yeah. It just strikes me that the worst elements are the ones that thrive in the chaos. When our system and our border was allowed to be in chaos,
yes,
and not orderly, that's what thrives. And now we're seeing with the rule of law, and Frank, I would never guess that it could be restored the way it was so quickly by the Trump administration. It's wonderful. But now the right elements are now have the upper hand. It's being able to go after and try to stop some of the worst things that are happening, because in that darkness, there's a lot of bad things that are happening, and it's so harmful. First and foremost, the folks who are being exploited, being brought to crush. They're the most vulnerable people.
Correct.
And then the American people also.
Right. So I'm on the board of one of our victims' rights centers, and that's where if a young woman or anybody says that they've been raped, we bring them there to make sure that we can address them. Well, time and time again, they couldn't tell what country they were in. So even though we could collect whatever information and take reports, there's absolutely nothing we could do about that.
And had they come from a number of different countries?
Yes, we had almost every country in the world coming through the Yuma sector. I think we were up about 145, and I think there's 180 in the world. So when you see people speaking Russian or Chinese, and it's just, how do you find Yuma? You obviously didn't pick Yuma,
right?
You know what I mean? But at the very beginning of the crisis, we had people coming from Cuba, and their destinations were Miami. Mm-hmm. Well, who would plan your trip?
Someone didn't look at the map on that one.
You come all the way across one continent, two countries, just to go back. So you clearly knew that this was cartel ran. It was cartel planned.
Yeah.
Those are obvious signs. It doesn't take a genius.
I think that was one of the misconceptions, is that decades ago it was principally Mexican immigration,
correct,
migrants crossing the border. But in the last administration, especially, that was not the case. That was almost the exception. I remember Chief Clem telling us that it was a very small minority that were actually Mexican nationals coming over the border. It was just people from all these other countries, which was really shocking to me. I didn't quite realize that. I think a lot of Americans don't.
No, I mean, routinely we would find airline tickets where people flew in to Mexicali, that's a fairly large center, or somewhere into Mexico. They'd then get a visitor's tourist visa for a 10-day stay. Then they'd fly to the border, and then they'd get on a bus, and they'd come to Algodones, which is just across the river from Yuma. You could see them get off the bus, walk down the bank of the river, walk across the Morelos Dam, which dams the river, and back up on the American side. And they just got off the plane literally hours ago.
Oh, wow.
They were carrying so much luggage that Border Patrol just said, no, everyone gets one bag. And they had dumpsters on the border for all the other luggage, because Border Patrol can't. They're not travel agents. They're not American Airlines, right? So, we had that odd issue going on.
So, as we wrap up, what... as the mayor of a border town, two questions. One is, with the border really being much more secure than it's been in our lifetime, possibly.
Yes.
How does that change the outlook, or does it change the outlook for Yuma? And then, what do you want people to know about a border town, being the mayor of a border town and what life's like here?
All right. Those are great questions. So one of the things that I really struggled with during that whole time, so we had all the humanitarian issues and all those things that are going on, but I was still trying to grow our local economy. And all you heard on the news, including in the interviews I was on, was how much chaos was along the border. But we still had a very vibrant, growing, expanding community that was still safe. And that was part of that frustration in, for instance, trying to attract new businesses or tourism, those kind of things, is trying to get the message out there that you don't have to be afraid to come to Yuma. Now, with all the changes nationally on the discussion on what's happening at the border, that's no longer a problem. That's no longer a perception. There's a perception of ICE is knocking down doors all the time, and that's not happening here either. Because again, we don't have a whole lot of illegal labor here. We have very minimal. So, I mean, from that perspective, that's been one of the big challenges. Repeatedly, time and time again, when I addressed the White House or the DHS secretary, it was just asking the president to say the border's closed. Just asking. The actions were secondary, but the message of the border, you're not welcome here, because time and time again, we would see people come across and say, President Biden invited me. And you're like, that's really interesting, because that's not what's happening. But just saying it, and Trump did it. The first day he said it's closed, and the border, there wasn't anybody that crossed the first couple of days, because everybody got that message. So from that perspective, that's glad to see that things have shifted, and we're no longer fighting those kind of battles, but there's still a lot of work to get done. So, and your second question?
Yeah, what would you like people to know who don't live in a border town about what life is like in a border town?
So the first thing is, you've seen a border town, you've seen one border town. We're all very unique.
Yeah.
What we do have in common is our relationship across the border is very strong. And that goes from every border town that I know, because there is just some of that symbiotic work going on. So I think it's an important part of our country to see. Yeah. I think if you want to really understand America in its totality, what's happening at the border is in our communities is extremely important. So yes, go see Grand Canyon and go see New York City and all that other fun stuff. But you got to see what's happening at the very southern part of our border, and everything's different. And I'll tell you, one of the great things that came out of New York during the crisis was when the mayor finally said, yeah, we're a border town too. And that changed the narrative. That changed with the Biden administration. Hey, we can't just ignore the cities because what's happening at the border is now perpetuating through the country. And so we were finally brought into the conversation with Mayor there saying that. It didn't necessarily really change anything because it spread the limited amount of funding thinner, but it did at least bring kind of the idea forward that issues at the border don't stop at the border. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that hopefully turned a page here, and that can just allow you to free you up even more to just do some great stuff in Yuma, continue the great work you've been doing over the last 12 years?
12 years, yeah.
11 years,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Somewhere in there. Yeah. We've done, just if I could just add, so we do things like for the last 9 years, we've taken hundreds of people from Yuma on bikes, and we go through Yuma County and we end up in Mexico, and that's supported by all of our all the cities, including the border Mexican cities, and that's just one way to show our communities more united than it is divided.
That's great.
Yeah,
Mayor, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you welcoming us to your city.
Thank you for coming here and giving us a minute to kind of tell what's happening different here.
Oh, we love your beautiful place.
Well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Well, folks, hey, if you want to see more about the border tour, be sure to check out our Facebook or Instagram page where Clayton Roush is taking you along on the tour. And if you like this episode or any others, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take them for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.